You have to run the miles. You have to do the work. Nobody can do it for you. Don't sit around expecting somebody to do it for you. Work on your schedule, get up early, start your day off doing those things that really matter before life starts dictating what you're going to be doing with your day.
Welcome to the Thought Leader Revolution with Nikki Ballou. Join the revolution. There's never been a better time in history to speak your truth, find your freedom, and make your fortune. Each week, we interview the world's top thought leaders and learn the secrets of how they built a 6 to 7 figure practice. This episode has been brought to you by eCircleacademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the podcast, The Thought Leader Revolution. I'm your host, Nikki Ballou, and boy, do we have an exciting guest lined up for you today. Today's guest is a dear friend of a good friend, and she is someone who has taken a bold stand for women, for real women, and for the right of women to be safe. In this day and age, you wouldn't think that'd be controversial, but sadly, that's not true. I am speaking, of course, of none other than the one, the only, the legendary Arwen Becker. Welcome to the show, Arwen.
Thank you, Nikki. I love that. What a great intro. I feel great. I can just go ahead and leave because I'm so built up already just by that.
Thank you. So listen, Arwen, the people that listen to this show are freedom-loving entrepreneurs. They're the men and women who, in my opinion, move the human race forward because they've got the passion and the courage to dream. And they come to this show not because of me, because I'm here every week. They're here to listen to you, to learn from you about how they can expand, how they can be better. You know, I had a guest on a few weeks ago. He said something really brilliant. He said that most of us are driven by our habitual thoughts and actions. And he said that 95% of our thoughts and actions are habitual. So if you want to change that, you need to listen to people who have different thoughts and suggest that you do different actions. So they got to get to know you, though, before they can really open themselves up to you. So tell us your backstory. How'd you get to be the great Arwen Becker?
So I guess let me give you 50 years in 3 minutes, right?
Perfect.
Okay, so I began my life as an athlete. I have always been involved in athletics, plain and simple. I was a competitive swimmer at a very young age of 6 is when I started. And really, over the course of most of my life, I have played 2 and 3 sports at a time, all the way up through college. I was the top athlete in a 4A school here outside of Seattle in the area called Kirkland, where I currently live. And then I played Division I volleyball at the University of Washington. There, I earned a zoology degree. Wanted to work with animals since the age of 5. There was nothing else that I wanted to do. And then towards the end of my college time, I landed a job at the second largest wildlife rehabilitation center in the state of Washington. So I got to work with every wild animal known to man in the state of Washington, raised many of them from babies. It was the coolest job, the absolute coolest job. And it ended up being the first job I was ever fired from. My dream job, and I was fired from it. And so I needed to get what everybody, many people in my life called a quote unquote real job because I received a stipend. I didn't make a lot of money doing that. And so I happened to have a girlfriend who knew I was looking for a job. Well, when I lost my job there, I would say that was the beginning to the end of my marriage at the time. So I had married my high school sweetheart. So I was divorced at 24, needing a job. And my girlfriend was sitting in this coffee shop. A guy needed her table. They started talking. He said, "I'm new to the building, just launched a company. Do you know of anybody who might be looking for a job?" So she connected the two of us. I accepted that position, and in the same week at 24, I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. So all this was kind of happening at the same time.
Praise God.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. Changed my life forever. And so that man who hired me became my business mentor, my business partner. A couple of years later, my husband. And now we've celebrated 20 years of marriage just this last year. So
Praise God.
one job interview.
Yeah.
Thank you. You never know where it might happen. And so I actually fell in love with my next career. I never imagined doing anything that didn't have anything to do with animals. But I actually fell in love with financial planning. I was always good with numbers. I loved this idea of helping people in this last season of life, of really being able to live when they've worked their whole career, 30, 40 years, to earn a paycheck and some money, to be able to live a great life for that final season. And so it really became something I was very interested in, very passionate about, and I got to do it with my best friend in the world, my husband. And so during that time, we raised 3 boys. And
Awesome.
About 16 years into the company, I landed in the ER. I thought I was having a heart attack. It was debilitating stress, and I was just done with the pressure. We had lived through the dot bomb. We had lived through the Great Recession, which as a financial company was nearly our complete undoing. And so I was in the ER. It was just debilitating stress. And that night, I was just like, I'm done. I want to sell it. And so I initiated the sale of our company. And God told me very clearly after I did it, it was all complete. I mean, this close. People were laid off. Employees were laid off. We already had new office space. Sublease documents were signed. All of it was done. God said, you do that, Arwen, it will end your marriage. And so I called it off. And that led to just this next season of life for me, which ended up being, we shifted our entire company to marketing to women. Most of our company was male advisors and half our staff was men, but I really saw a huge need to serve women in the financial planning industry. I felt my industry did it very poorly. And a lot of women, especially single, divorced, never married women, were really left out of the financial conversation. And even a lot of married women were left out of the conversation. And so that's what our company did. We transitioned. And eventually that led to me training advisors nationally, to keynoting on the topic, to writing a couple of books. And in June of 22, we sold our company. And for 20 times what I was going to sell it for in 2016, mind you. Wow. So that was a big, big deal for any entrepreneur out there who's in the dip, as Seth Godin talks about. Yeah. I know what that's like. And in 22, I also gave up alcohol. I started my endurance athletic career. And it was that same year that my alma mater, the University of Washington, offered a athletic scholarship to a boy to play on the team I was on. And that was when this feeling of just this deep unrest, because I have no daughters. I don't have, quote unquote, a dog in the fight right now. But I just had to look back at my 10-year-old self changing in the locker rooms as a young swimmer, a very insecure girl, as most 10-year-olds would be. And I couldn't handle it. It was creating so much turmoil. And so it really led me to partner with XXXY Athletics and to start using my platform, which it was always identified as this only positive motivational content found here. I had to come to a day where I drew a line in the sand. I had talked to my family and certainly spent some time in prayer about it, and just saying that I know that God's calling me into this space, and I have to be willing to take all of it and open myself up to the negativity that I'd worked so hard to avoid. Yep. And now I'm in this 3rd season of my life of kind of reinventing what I'm doing, but more importantly, just being able to really be a light to others, and more importantly, young girls who are just like me, who are having their opportunities stripped from them and expected to speak up about it at the age of 13, 14, 15. So me turning 50 this year, it's the least I can do for my younger self and all those girls coming up behind me. So there it is, 3-4 minutes of 50 years.
Wow. That's a heck of a story. I mean, to unpack it all, you're a woman who was an athlete. You played Division I volleyball. That's a big deal. You got married to your high school sweetheart, divorced at 24, but also accepted Christ as your Lord and Savior. Married a great man, been married 20 plus years, 3 boys, built a business, and got a message from God to do it a little differently, and kept the business, and then built it and sold it. And now you've been speaking all over America. And when you saw what was being done by your alma mater, you decided to get involved and speak up. I brought Jen Say on my podcast. In fact, I'm interviewing her again on Monday with
Nice.
couple other apparel company folks who have cause-driven apparel companies, so it should be a pretty cool interview. And I'm very much resonating with women and men who are conviction-driven. Growing up, my two favorite politicians were Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. And God, that woman was tough as nails. You know,
That's what everyone says.
you could not knock her off course. She spoke the truth as she saw it, and I just loved her. You know, she was the mom. She was my kind of like surrogate mom out there, who basically stood up for what was right. And I think the last 100 years have been interesting because the forces of godless communism have been on the march within Western countries like the United States, like Canada, attempting to turn them against themselves from within. And I believe they've, in large measure, had a lot of success in doing that. And really, what's amazing is that the American people this November decided they'd had enough of that, and they elected Donald Trump. And I think a lot of people are feeling hopeful and optimistic for the first time that the folks in power are on our side. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on all that.
Yeah, you know, the part that always resonates with me when people talk about the fact that Trump got elected, that people just had enough. The sheer realization that people had to overcome the narrative and still vote for him. That was the thing that that so just tells me how sick and tired people were with what was happening here in the States, and the path that we were on, and the censorship of a lot of conservative voices, of people who don't go out there yelling at you. They're just, you know, silently praying outside of an abortion clinic, and they get thrown in jail for it. I mean, it's just
for 20 years.
Absolute craziness, like older women. I mean, like women that are in their 60s and 70s, and it's just
grandmas.
Exactly, and it was that fact that people were still willing to say, I will vote for a 34-time convicted felon and all the other things that the media spun about him, because they were just so tired of it. They were tired of being told that they're bad, that they're racist, that they are misogynistic, that they are, they're supposed to not see color, but yet they're supposed to see race and everything. And it's just like all of these components that just the silent majority. I mean, that's when I changed the tagline. It was like the day that I was like, okay, I'm changing my platform. You're going to see something totally different from me, and you may not like it, but it's what you're going to see. I'm going to give you where I am. And it's that I'm tired of being the silent majority. Yeah. I'm tired of being the people that I get the emails from, that I, of course, hear from many people who are in this space of speaking up for girls' rights and sports and safe spaces and things like that. Those private emails of people going, yeah, I totally support you. I'm like, but you wouldn't even have the guts to wear an XXXY hat outside. And that's the part that that so frustrates me, is that there is such a massive silent majority, but most of them still are unwilling to just be open about even a little bit, maybe share a post or like certain posts, or just speak up even ever so slightly. I mean, it's not, you don't have to grandstand, but to just be willing to publicly make your beliefs known and be that lighthouse for other people to say, oh, okay, they believe the same that I do. Okay, it gives me a little more encouragement. And so there have been many women like Jen Say, like Riley Gaines, like Megyn Kelly, that I have gotten a lot of influence and just inspiration from, that the negativity that will absolutely come, It absolutely comes, and it hits you like a ton of bricks, right? When you enter into this space. And I just think that's totally the devil. I mean, 100%. It's just like he's going to just all of a sudden throw it at you really, really hard and fast in hopes that you just turn around and tuck tail and say, never mind, it's just too hard. And just seeing them and hearing them be willing to just continue to speak up for common sense and what the vast majority of us believe, and that there is a biological difference between men and women. They should not be competing in sports together, no. And they should not be sharing prisons, and they should not be sharing locker rooms. No. And if that is the controversial statement, I have to be willing, and I am willing to stand in that as long as it takes to go back to what it was that it always was, which was not controversial.
Yeah, like the forces of darkness, the forces of the devil, as you put it, honestly are out to destroy good, and they're out to destroy the United States. And the United States, more than anything to me, is an idea. More than it's a country, it's an idea. It's an idea that men and women can live free, can govern themselves, can choose how they live. And an idea that the men and women of the United States are a godly people, that they believe in God and that they live their lives in a godly fashion. And to me, you know, when I read history books, that was accepted as a matter of course at the time of the founding of the United States, throughout the 1800s, throughout much of the 1900s. It's only in the last 10 years that became controversial in certain circles. But I think the folks that tried to make that controversial were all about fundamentally transforming the United States to something different. That's what Barack Obama said he wanted to do when he got elected, right? He wanted to fundamentally transform the United States. And I believe folks like him are on the side of the devils, not the angels. And we all need to stand up for common sense things like boys and girls are different. Gender dysphoria being experienced by someone does not mean that the rest of us need to pretend that their dysphoria is now our reality. Right. And it is absolutely insane that some men with serious mental problems are now being told that you can go step into women's spaces and, hey, you don't actually have to go through the steps of turning yourself physically into a woman. You don't have to go and have surgery and remove your genitals and get breasts added to yourself and have hormone shot. You can just say, I'm a woman now. And then you don't even have to shave. Any woman's space. And my God, that's nuts. Yeah. To me, that's nuts. You know.
Yeah. And that the thing that has really just lit a fire for me as I've been talking about this more and speaking out more is I'm frustrated with the abdication of responsibility going to teenage girls, these athletes. I mean, most teenage girls, by the time when I started my college career, I was 17.
Yeah.
I was an insecure 17-year-old. I was a people pleaser. I am a child of an alcoholic. I am the kid who is always going to do what the coach tells me, even if it hurts me, even if it's destructive, even if it's not good. That's been something that I've had to work through in the last 10 years with a therapist, is recognizing those things that are unhealthy about my driven nature and my willingness to do what's asked of me. And that's the part that just so frustrates me, because here you're expecting an insecure, young, still developing, still very much cares what her peers think of her and the system in which she is in, her school, her sports teams, all of that. And we're expecting her. The amount of people are like, yeah, well, until all those girls sit down and stop competing, it's like, so you're abdicating your responsibility. Yeah. You're telling, just like me, I have no girls who are enduring this right now, but now I've become friends with those girls. So now I do have girls who have been willing to stand up. And every time I get a message or I speak to any of them, it always brings me to tears, because I'm just like, would I have had that courage as a very driven 15-year-old? But man, I was still the one who would often not say anything just to keep the peace.
Sure.
And we're expecting them to do that. And that's the part of the silent majority that it's like, if everybody just like me can be willing to just say, no, this is not acceptable. If the parents are willing to just say this is not acceptable, but everybody's avoiding it for the same reasons. They don't want to get the pushback. They don't want to get labeled. They don't want to get deplatformed or, get called in by their boss. Like Jen Say, you read her book, it's all throughout there of what happened when she started speaking up about, COVID, the COVID lockdowns and kids in schools. And, and man, her superiors were okay for a while until the heat got turned up too much and people started, demanding on pitchforks that she got fired. And, it's a very real thing. I don't discount that. But it's just like anything. If we band together, it doesn't even take that many of us, but more than the fringe majority that are just really loud, aggressive, and, mean, very, very mean. This is how we change it. And that's the part that really frustrates me. And so that's the part I'm hoping to lend my voice to as a woman is still very much in athletics. I love my endurance events that I do. Training for, I have at least 3 on the calendar this year.
What are you doing?
I specifically do, I'm doing a half marathon in a couple of weeks. That's just kind of like things that I just throw on my calendar. It's funny because I was never an endurance athlete. All of my athletics were sprints. So I never thought I could do anything like that. But I'm actually officially an endurance hiker. So actually this logo that's on my chest, if you can see it, it's for an event called 29029. Very simply stated, it's an endurance hike, many different mountains. Like I've done Mont Tremblant, I've done Whistler, I've done Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Utah, a number of places. But the premise is very simple. You hike up the mountain and then you ride the gondola down and you repeat that until you hit 29,029 vertical feet, which is the equivalent to Mount Everest. And you have 36 hours to do it.
Shut up.
So there's your endurance
awesome.
hike.
I should introduce you to my lady love, Teresa.
Yeah.
So Teresa's done like 23 marathons. She's a crazy marathoner. And then
That's awesome.
In her late 40s, she decided, just for shits and giggles, to break a world record for most distance run over 12 hours on a treadmill. And then she didn't do it once, but 3 times. So she set 3 Guinness World Records. She's into all this crazy stuff.
So how far did she get?
God. 90 plus kilometers. 90 plus kilometers.
Wow. Oh my God.
That was pretty intense.
Wow.
I did the first hour the first time with her. Like you, I'm more of a sprinter. So it just,
Good for her.
Yeah. The two of you would get along. She thinks like us. She's like us. You like her. She's a good lady. We work together in our business as well, just like you and your husband do. So it's kind of a thing. But really, really cool. Really, really cool. I was thinking of this beautiful quote from Edmund Burke that goes something like this: "The only condition necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing."
Yeah.
And that really has been, unfortunately, something that the bad guys have been counting on. And part of their strategy, if you ever want to find out how they work, you should get a book and read it called Rules for Radicals by a guy named Saul Alinsky. And he talks about how to defeat the squares, people like us. And basically, they accuse you of what they're doing, right? So they'll call you a racist when they're the ones who are the racists. They belittle you, they mock you, and their entire strategy is to get you to shut up, because if you don't fight back, they win, right?
Right.
So I'm originally...
one of the things, Nikki, I was going to tell you that I have seen in the most absolutely massive way is all but one of the girls that I have really connected with throughout this process, I would say are, 22 and under, who have been either in college or in high school. I actually just contacted a girl here in the state of Washington who just a couple of days ago, the JV game just, refused to compete because there was a man on one of the other teams. And the teachers union is looking into her for bullying. So this is post-Trump, right? And so this is still going on. This isn't just like overnight anything getting fixed. But the overwhelming commonality of these very brave girls to speak up and speak out and say, I'm unwilling to compete. And a lot of them, it's just by not competing and saying why they didn't, not being mean, any of that kind of stuff. They're all devout Christian women who have a very strong faith in God. And that to me is so telling, because in order to look this kind of evil, this kind of oppression, this kind of, you better sit down, be quiet, not speak out, all the negativity that comes with it, the trolling, the death threats, there's special places in hell for you. This is not Christian-like, all the things that I've also got as well. That is the one commonality that I have seen through almost every single one of these girls, is that they have a strong faith. And part of that is because they know inherently, just as I do, that they were created with a purpose. They were created by the, incredible creator who created, the mountains that I can see out my window and Mount Rainier and all these beautiful places that I get to hike, that he so delicately and with intention created each one of us with a design and didn't do it haphazardly. If he knows every little feather on the sparrows that are outside my windows, how much more? It says, how much more does he know about us? Every hair on my head is numbered. I got a lot of hair, And so all of these girls, I've seen that as such a commonality, because they have this, they're rooted in a belief that they know that they were created for something. But then that goes secondarily to, I also believe that all the people I come in contact with, no matter where they're at in their journey, God created them with a purpose as well. Unmistakably, every bad thing that's happened to me in my life and all the horrible things that I've gone through have always led me to when I've got to the other side going, oh yeah, I certainly didn't see it at the time. I can't believe I had to go through that. But now I understand. I understand why you wanted me to go through that, because it was something I needed to learn so I could now be a hand up to people who are coming behind me or suffering from the same issue or struggling with it. And so, just knowing that about themselves also makes you understand that about other people. It's like, I have a lot of empathy for people who are struggling with gender dysphoria. Truly, I just like anorexia. But as I heard Chloe Cole, one of the detransitioners, talk about, she said, what's happening now is that we have doctors who are talking to these kids coming in who are saying, I believe I'm in the wrong body, help me chop things up and change it all and mutilate it so it never functions properly for the rest of my life. And instead of saying, we need to get you in some counseling for a while, we need to try and unpack some things in your past that might be leading to why you believe that. But instead, Chloe Cole said, it's like the doctors have an anorexic patient come in going, I am way too fat, this isn't working. And the doctor doesn't say, we need some therapy. They say, you know what, you're right, you are. We need to get you some liposuction. And it's like
nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
This
criminal.
Right. And so it is. And so knowing that there are people out there who have detransitioned, who have believed that they were in a space that really wasn't the space that they were in, compassion says, I have to believe that the person standing in front of me could very well be facing that same thing. So I can't jump into that delusion with them and just make them feel good about this decision that they're making. And then, like you said, then adapt my whole world and everybody around me's whole world to pitch that delusion up.
Yeah.
And with the study that I've been doing and really understanding gender dysphoria, the part that comes down to that I hang on to every time is, so the study on the NIH, very deep studies say about 10% of people who are presenting as a female suffer from gender dysphoria. that means the other 90% are autogynephiles. They are men who receive some sort of excitement, intrigue. They get enjoyment out of dressing up as a woman and being in spaces that women only are allowed, and seeing that reaction. Not all of them filter through in all those ways, but that just means the vast majority of men, especially now, look at it. I mean, a lot of men are very aggressive about how they talk about how I deserve to be in your bathroom and whether you like it or not. I mean, just some of the disgusting things that we see online. And it's like, how can you make every woman who has this natural, innate sense of fear just subjugate that?
Of men.
Right. Subjugate that and say, oh, you can be allowed in my restroom. And that's the thing that I keep coming back to. If the very small majority don't get this enjoyment out of it, that they're just suffering from gender dysphoria and they're trying to work it through, we can't allow the other 90% who are in that space because of more nefarious reasons that they may or may not recognize. That's just, you can't have a gray area. You can't allow men into women's prisons and then start handing out condoms. That doesn't make sense.
0 cents. 0 cents. Because some of the men that go into women's prisons end up raping the women inmates, which is insanity.
Exactly. And impregnating them. The fact that women are getting pregnant in women's prisons. Now, somebody obviously doesn't pick up on the fact that common sense would say that's because you keep men out of women's prisons.
Yeah.
And it's just we're in this weird, very, very weird opposite world thing that it just, I can't believe I'm even having to use my voice to speak about this kind of stuff, but it is where we are. And it's where God's called me to be. So that's why I'm here.
It's one of the key civil rights issues of our time.
Yeah.
It is. Jen Say and Riley Gaines are like the Martin Luther King and Ralph Abernathy of our time.
Right.
And it's important, I think, for businessmen and businesswomen listening to this. We're wondering, well, what does the heck does this have to do with me in business? I think your business has to have a why to it that's bigger than I want to make money. Yeah. Making money is very important. I love making money. I'm a big fan. I'm a capitalist through and through.
Me too.
But professionally, what I do is I work with entrepreneurs and thought leaders, especially, and I help them get their thought leadership to a new level and make more money. I love it. I love what I do. But you got to be standing for something. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And your business needs to have a cause to it. Some sort of a cause that is intrinsic to who you are, not what you think the market's going to pat you on the head for. So and
that's actually one of the things. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say about our business. And when I really shifted our focus from doing what everybody else was doing, which was, just trying to work with everybody in our community and really honing in on women, it's in the beginning, from the entrepreneur side, it wasn't something that all the data points made sense. Yeah. A lot of the data points didn't make sense, but what the feedback that I was getting from the women that I was talking to and that were coming into these events, and when I would speak and we would be meeting with them, I was hearing the same thing over and over and over again, that they just didn't feel welcome. Not that the financial industry just speaks a masculine language. I mean, it's 75%, 80% are men. And so it's just natural that it goes that way. But a lot of these women felt left out of the conversation. And so for me, it really became much more of a mission to be able to reach women who were not being reached by my industry. And then how do you, for lack of a better term, create disciples in other areas of the country of people who live in those areas that can also see women who are underserved, undermarketed to, and yet they're the largest segment of the U.S. population, the greatest holders of wealth. And in the United States, in the next 10 to 15 years, are going to hold north of 60% of U.S. wealth because baby boomers are transferring, $30 trillion to them, and 20% or 2/3 of that 20 trillion is going to be going to women. And yet, a lot of people still don't see the value in it. And it's like, I want to help change the generational curses. I want to be able to help impact the next generation coming up. And so as I've kind of sunsetted my financial career, my husband retired after 36 years in his career and selling the business. This year, I finally have kind of said, okay, I'm kind of done with the training and the keynoting specifically on that topic, the financial topic, because I've been removed from it for a year and a half now, and it just doesn't feel congruent to where I'm going.
Sure.
But the mission is still the same. And, it's about, it was always about having, and I would teach on this, that it wasn't the presenter, it wasn't the person who was delivering the message. It was the safety that women feel being in a learning environment with other women. And that was what made all the difference, is women would come to our events because it said women only. And, and I even got pushback from people on that. It's like, how can you not let him, her husband come to the event? And I said, because I have committed to all of the other women that there won't be men in the room. Does that mean that I didn't have an occasional, self-identifying trans person in the room over, 10 years? Yeah, there were a couple that went in there. But it was really just honoring the space that I had agreed upon with all of the other women, that they weren't going to get sat next to somebody else's husband and not be able to have any sort of communication, because women are communal beings. They like to talk that way, but we're also told to be kind and accommodating, and a lot of characteristics that are the absolute reason that we are in this space. Because if men were we're dealing with the exact same thing that we're dealing with, this thing would have been snuffed out in an instant. But women are told to be accommodating. They're told to be, nice and demure, and don't speak up, and don't sound like you're a bitch, and don't, be overbearing, and, all these kind of things. And these are natural tendencies that make us great moms and, compassionate friends and, a wonderful spouse. But when you're in the battle, those things can work against you. And that's what we're seeing, as a lot of women are really struggling at using their voice because they've been told throughout their life, or they've just lived that way, that I don't want to make waves. I don't want to be seen as this horrible, bad person. And yet, when I lay my head down on my pillow at night, I feel so much better having had and continuing to have the negativity. It always hurts when it comes from people you actually know, but having the negativity, because all of the other side of the women and the girls that aren't able to speak up, aren't willing, they're not at that space yet, they're too young to do it, that at least I'm doing what God has called me to do. And so I guess I've kind of always been in this space of mission, whether it was hurt wildlife that ended up turning into working with women, and now really being able to help further this fight and this battle and ultimately win it worldwide. It has to be worldwide. We can't have the Olympic Commission allowing men into women's sports. So this is definitely something that is going to require a fight for some time, and I'm here for it.
Amen. Well, God bless you for doing it. I think a lot more men and fathers need to step up and stand up for young girls and young women that are being treated in such an abominable way. This means barring the door. If a man's trying to go into your daughter's change room or washroom, this means speaking up. This means spending money at companies like XXXY. Yeah. This means calling your legislators and making sure that they're seeing things your way, and if they're not, fighting to get them out of there. Right. And this means speaking up. Men are the warriors of society, and they need to start fighting. They need to start standing up for their women. That's our job.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree.
It's our freaking job.
Did you see that?
I've got sons. I don't have daughters. Yeah. But I'm telling you, if I had daughters, this shit wouldn't be going down. I'd be going to jail. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. We'll go to jail. But my
Did you
girl's
see
gonna
that?
see me.
I'm not exactly sure where it was, but it looked, the gentleman looked like they were maybe Samoan or something, and they were doing a fight against a pride parade, and they were
New
all coming
Zealand.
together.
The
Yes.
haka dance dudes, man.
That was
awesome.
awesome. Actually, my middle
It scared
son's
the crap out of
living
those
in New
crazy
Zealand right
people.
now. Makes me proud. But yeah, that's when I saw it. I just like what you just said. It's that. I mean, the Bible talks about a woman being the weaker vessel. And as a girl who was always a tomboy, always had a bunch of guy friends, loved competing and playing with the boys, so to speak, I knew from a very young age that there was a limitation on what I could do. From the time I was in 7th grade, as these boys were barely even into puberty, I was hitting that point where I couldn't beat them. And yet I don't take that as a bad thing, because again, when you're rooted in, I have been created, God created me with a purpose, and I know part of that purpose is walking out this beautiful vessel of being a woman and having those feminine qualities and having the weaker body, physical weaker body that needs a man to be able to come around and help her up sometimes and encourage her and be that protector. I mean, to stand, those moments where my husband has really needed to stand in that space and say, hey, I will take all the bullets for you. I will do whatever is necessary. That as a woman is so intoxicating. And yet a lot of women who think they're feminists think, I don't need a man. And it's like, it was just it's this beautiful, this dance that was just, it was all created to work together. And I fully agree with you. Dads being able to be that space. I didn't have, functioning dad in the home that, told me that I was beautiful, that I was loved. And both my sister and I, we bear some of those scars from our childhood of not having that. Mine went into good things, overachieving. And my sister, she was struggling with not being in that stuff, but it was always trying to fill the void. And the void really comes from having a strong man, whether that's a dad who just really loves you. Riley talks about how incredible her parents are, and it's obvious.
Yeah.
It's obvious when you hear her speak that she not only is rooted in just a family unit that just believes in God, but that they told her how capable she was, but they also gave her the foundational principles that, and one day you're gonna find a man that's gonna be a great complement to this powerful woman that you are, but you still need a partner. And so that's a huge part of it. It is a huge part of this fight. It really is.
Amen. Amen. So, Arwen, if people want to find out more about what you're up to, where do we send them?
Well, I do most of my posting through my Instagram account. So Arwen Becker, ARWEN, it comes out of Lord of the Rings. My dad was a bit of a hippie in the 70s, so that's where it comes out of. So Arwen Becker is my main account. I also post to YouTube. There's a lot of my endurance races. I kind of do these mini documentaries there, and that's under my Life, L-I-F-E, Life with Arwen account. And then arwenbecker.com. That's my website. That's where I interviewed a lot of women in 20 and 21 on how they overcame major adversity and what they learned through it. So that's where my podcast is still actually on Apple and all main platforms as well, but you can find those there. And all of my media interviews, all the things that I've done throughout my career, a number of that can be found there. And then I've got 2 books. I have She Handled It, So Can You. And then I have She Handled It, Retirement, which is an inspiring and empowering financial book for women over the age of 40, because retirement planning really does start in your 40s, not when you're 60. Don't wait till then.
Amen.
I've seen that.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we end each episode by asking you as our guest expert to give us your top 3 expert action steps. These are your best pieces of advice in bullet point form to help my listener take his or her life to another level. What say you?
First one, I would say The Compound Effect. If you haven't read that book by Darren Hardy, he also has a journal that goes along with it. It's absolutely awesome. And it's a quick read. Compound effect is based on very simple principle. It's the small things over time add up to make the big results. And that is in everything. And so just being willing to do the daily actions are going to daily actions of, anything that you're trying to improve, those things are going to add up over time and really make the big difference. So that would be number one. Number two, you have to run the miles. You have to do the work. Nobody can do it for you. Don't sit around expecting somebody to do it for you. You have to work on your schedule, get up early, and start your day off doing those things that really matter before life starts dictating what you're going to be doing with your day. So I used to, very religiously get up between 4:30 and 5. Now I sleep in a little bit more, but really starting your day off and knowing what your 3 top priorities of the day are going to be. So run the miles, do the work. And then number 3, I would say, is something I learned with my endurance hiking. It took me a long time to really realize this. And endurance hiking, when you're doing 30 hours of hiking, middle of the night, alone, things like that, you learn this. You need to be present where your feet are planted. You can't rush the process. And worse yet, when we are achieving a goal and we're in the pursuit of a goal, if all we're focused on is the goal and not the journey, we get to the goal and it's very fleeting. You have momentary joy, but it's over. And so being able to enjoy the journey along the way and look up and see what's going on and the suffering, all the components that come with really striving for something, just knowing that you're exactly where you're supposed to be at that point and fighting to enjoy it along the way, because the journey is way longer than that little goal that is your destination.
Those are 3 awesome expert action steps. Arwen, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your story, and sharing your courage and your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Listener, Arwen Becker is the real deal. Go check out her website, her IG page, her YouTube page. And if you agree with us that it's time to stand up for what's right, which means stand up for girls, stand up for women, then do me a favor and share this episode with someone who needs to hear its message. And if you know someone that's dealing with the pressure of the dark forces in our society and being told that if they don't conform to what's wrong and pretend that a man is a woman, they're going to face severe consequences, share this episode with them to give them some hope, because a little spark of hope can turn into a roaring fire and give these young girls what they need to stand tall and stand strong and come out on the other side better than they were before it. Make sure you do that. Until next time, goodbye.
This episode has been brought to you by eCircleAcademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.